Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and you are in for a real treat here in today's episode because I've got an incredible guest who I've been chomping at the bit for today's conversation for because she eats, sleeps, breathes, lives one of my favorite words in all of entrepreneurship, which is systems. So I'm going to tell you about today's guest. Her name is Brie Chrisman. She is the owner and CEO of BC Creative, a systems, strategy, and business operations agency that provides implementation and consulting support to business owners, helping them reduce costs, save time, that's a big one we're going to talk about today, and step into their CEO role with ease. To tell you a little bit about BC Creative, Brie's team supports business owners who are stuck. They're usually in a period of rapid growth, but they've hit a proverbial wall that is hindering their growth. They provide daily back-end support, growth strategy consulting, and everything in between, including operations audits and full systems builds. And the only reason why I'm telling you all of this at the top of the episode is because I hope you're hearing this and saying, holy cow, I don't have any of that in place. And that's why I'm so excited with my conversation with Brie Chrisman. So without further ado, let's dive in. All right, Brie, you heard my excitement in the intro. Let me officially welcome you to the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Hey, it's so great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Heck yeah. So obviously, I tooted your horn quite a bit in the intro, and it is because I'm so excited to dive in to all the good stuff that you do from a business perspective. But first things first, fill in the gaps on a human level. Who the heck is Brie Chrisman?
Gosh, that is such a big question. I am obviously an entrepreneur, a business owner. I'm also a mom of two kids. I have a 3-year-old and a 4-month-old. And of course, BC Creative is my third baby. We live in South Carolina, just actually working on buying our dream home, which is all, the culmination of my efforts and my husband's efforts and, all of our growth the past couple of years from BC Creative, which has been fantastic. I started BC Creative in 2020, right around the pandemic, because I got laid off from my job, and I really just loved systems, and I've been doing them my entire life. So I decided I was like, hey, why not? I can make a business. I can figure this thing out. And 2.5 years later, we are crushing it, and the sky's the limit. And it just keeps growing and growing, which is super great.
Heck yeah. And I'm sure that listeners who are keen listeners of this show are realizing how many freaking guests we've had on that started their business during the pandemic. And Brie, it's something that I absolutely love about your story. I want you to take us back to that transition, because I know there was a little interim period where you started out just as a virtual assistant. Walk us through getting laid off, becoming a VA, and now you run a 6-figure business with 4 people on your team. I want to hear all about that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I had my first son in November of 2019, and I had just gotten back to work after maternity leave in the end of January, and then middle of March, COVID happened in the US, and I got laid off, and I thought it was temporary, and then it ended up not being temporary. And I have a background in marketing, and I have a background in sport event management, and clearly neither of those things were happening at that moment. There was no budgets for marketing, and sports weren't happening, and events weren't happening. So my career path was basically gone completely. So I, looked and hunted and searched for all of these part-time, or full-time jobs, but work from home. So that way I didn't have to leave the house, because no one wanted to leave the house at that point. And also I realized how much I love being home with my son. So I was like, I'm going to just look and see at this virtual assistant thing. I have all of these skills. Every job that I've ever had, I've pretty much worked from the ground up, from intern level all the way up. And I've always kind of honed my skills that way. And so I figured virtual assistants is kind of the grunt work. It's all like the inbox management and the day-to-day stuff, the stuff that people don't like to do that I love to do. So why not? And so I started virtual assistant work. I was originally going to go through like Fiverr and Upwork, and I was like, I'll just start my own company. And I took a couple courses and I learned how to set up a business. And I started in July of 2020, and I had my first client by August, and I was fully booked by, I think, November or December. And every entrepreneur's journey includes, just mistakes and all of that. And as you're growing, you figure out what path you want to be on. And I realized that kind of about this time last year that the agency path was really what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to make a bigger impact which I can't do when I am completely booked out. So I brought team members on, and we really kind of rounded this out. And as I got pregnant with my second child, I had a daughter in September, and I was able to basically download my brain into one of my team members, and she ran my company for 2 months while I was gone. So it really is a collaborative team. We are bringing on tons of clients. We actually, I think, brought on 3 or 4 clients already this month, and it's January of 2023. So we're hoping that, we can keep this momentum going and keep growing and growing. And, the goal is to have an agency where we can make as big an impact as possible, because the more impact that we can have on business owners, the more impact they can have on their customers.
Heck yeah, I absolutely love that attitude. And I obviously love the growth trajectory and how much you're already taking action. And that's why I want to go back to those building blocks, because obviously at the root of all of this growth is your ability to get clients. And you mentioned Fiverr, you mentioned Upwork. What were those beginning steps when it came to first getting your VA clients? And then tell us the story about your first real agency client.
Yeah, I realized that I didn't want to fight for clients on Upwork and Fiverr, especially because it just didn't seem like my kind of deal. Like I was going to have to constantly put applications in and all of that and work on all of these value first things to possibly not even get the gig, which I was like, that there has to be a more efficient way to do that. And I am the queen of efficiency. So that was exactly what I wanted to do. So I actually shout out to the Virtual Savvy. They are a VA company that they essentially train people how to become virtual assistants. And I was like, yes, I love Abby. This is going to be great. I consumed every possible free content that she had. And then I went ahead and bought her course. And that really was like, those were the building blocks that I had to really figure out how to set up the business and figure out how to market myself and set up my packages and everything. And my first client was, I posted on LinkedIn. I was like, hey, I'm doing this thing. If you need any help, let me know. And it was somebody that I had worked with, like a coworker from my last 2 positions prior. And she's like, oh my gosh, I know your skill set, and I know you're a workhorse, and you're amazing at everything you do. And if you can't figure it out, or if you don't know how to do it, you'll figure it out. And she's like, I need help. And and she's like, this is great because I don't have to interview anyone because I know how you work. So that was fantastic. And then she told some friends, and I really just kept marketing. And honestly, my 99% of my business has been completely referral based. So I just started marketing again for the first time since like November of, I guess, 2021. So, which is great. And now that we're marketing, we're hoping that we can keep that trajectory going. And then for our first agency client, I'd have to say that was probably the first person that I took on that I didn't actually work directly with. And that was March of last year. And they are just a local company here in the Charlotte area. And he is loving the team, and it's great because he works with my team member Allison, and we also collaborate on things. So like I'll jump into meetings once a month or once a quarter, and I'm actually we're about to collaborate on doing a complete website overhaul for him. So yeah, it's really cool because I get to kind of peek into these projects without having my finger on every single thing, but I'm able to empower my team members to do the work, so that way our clients really have like a full range of brains and, brain power, which is it's really, really neat to be able to see that and see how it's culminated.
Heck yeah. Brie, I love your answers so much because the thing that really stands out to me is you can't answer them without saying the word systems, without talking about efficiencies already. And that's why, obviously, it's going to be at the center of our conversation here today. I want to talk about systems because remember, the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur community is full of a lot of solopreneurs, a lot of agency owners, a lot of aspiring agency owners or service providers in general. And we throw the word systems around so much in the world of entrepreneurship. What does that actually mean to you? What are systems, and what systems do you think every entrepreneur needs to have?
Systems are really just it could go a million different ways with this. A system is essentially just a way to do something. So it could be, your system is like a CRM system, a customer relationship management system, or a project management system. But it could just be like, I have a system for onboarding a client, and maybe that's just a checklist. But that is a system. I mean, it's really any way that, or any process, essentially, anything that it's a repeatable action. You do it more than once, you have multiple steps, that's a system. And any system also, as a side note, needs an SOP, standard operating procedure. My team, if they listen to this, they will laugh because I am like, SOPs for everything. We are all about the SOPs because then it makes everyone's lives easier.
Heck yeah. Amen to that. It's something that I absolutely love. I use a tool. I'm going to plug real quick. Brie, I don't know if you've ever come across this tool, but to me, it's one thing that makes all my businesses tick, and that's Scribe How. So it's at scribehow.com. Generates incredible SOPs within minutes. So I'm a big fan of Scribe How. But on that note, speaking of SOPs, speaking of these basic systems to start out with, one thing that I'm curious to get your perspective on, Brie, not only in your own growth trajectory from 0 to 6 figures, en route to 7 figures. I can't wait to celebrate that with you one day. What I'd love to hear is, how do you see systems changing from that groundbreaking, someone just started their business, they may have 1 client, they may have 0 clients. What systems do you see at that level versus yourself running a 6-figure agency now? How do those systems change, or do they change?
Yeah, I think that I'm all about simplicity and effectiveness, cost effectiveness. So I tell my clients all the time, like, you do not have to have like the top tier level of software. If you can get away with a free version, do it. But as when I started as a VA, I used simple things like a simple invoicing system and a simple contract system. And I think really, if you keep your system simple, which you should, 1, for cost purposes, 2, for ease of use, and 3, just if you're onboarding team members, it's less that they have to learn and it's not super complicated. Plus, it's really hard to keep track of that if it's really complicated. You shouldn't have to change it that much. I think the only thing that I really changed is that I implemented a CRM system. I used Dubsado. So, and that really, and we're still kind of getting that set up because the last year was really getting the business set up and the foundations in place for me to go on maternity leave. So we really just kind of got Dubsado working at like a base level. Like, okay, we need to get invoices out, we need to get contracts out, and that's it. But we're really beefing it up, and we're going to get it to where it's kind of an all-in-one system. So all of our forms going through that, all of our questionnaires, testimonial, surveys, all of that is going to be on Dubsado. And that, I was doing that kind of manually before, which was fine. But that really is, leaning into Dubsado is really kind of, we've started to do that more and more with the agency model. And I think it's really, as far as like software and systems and how they grow, I love, and one of my big things with clients is letting them know, like, hey, let's maximize what you're already using. So if you're using Airtable or ClickUp or Dubsado or Honeybook or, all of these buzzword softwares, if you're already using it and you love it, then lean into that and really maximize how you're using it. So that way you can keep the same process, so just make it, beef it up a little bit.
Yeah, really good advice there. And I want to dig a little bit deeper into that because to me, one of the unique things about the way that you guys operate at BC Creative is that you aren't just building things for people, you also encompass that strategy component. And that's why strategically, there's so much to look at when we look at the health of businesses, when we look at the growth trajectory of businesses. And you've already mentioned things like a client onboarding system to have in place. Maybe it's a checklist, maybe it's, different tools that you utilize to do that. You've already mentioned the project execution component of working with clients. What sort of silos or what sort of areas or parts of a business do you look at to incorporate those systems that you always say to yourself, holy cow, these businesses, they have nothing in place when it comes to sales or marketing, or you already mentioned a CRM, like a follow-up system. What are those different types of strategic parts of the business that you look at?
Honestly, onboarding is always a number one thing and let me back up. I will say every business is unique and every industry is unique and every business has its own unique fingerprint. So no two businesses are the same, even if they, sell the same thing, have the same amount of team members, whatever. They're all completely different. However, and this is part of the reason why we can work with so many industries, every back end is fairly similar. So everybody needs an invoicing system. Everyone needs a way to onboard clients. At least for like service-based businesses. If it's a product-based business, obviously everyone needs a way to sell their product. Everyone needs a way to onboard team members if that's part of your business goals. So really those core things that help you run your business. So a way to communicate with either team members or customers or both, a way to onboard team members or customers or both, a way to take payments, because that's obviously one of the number one goals of business, right? Like obviously we all have passions, we create businesses based on what we're passionate about, but the end goal really is to make money too, of course. And then ways to, do contracts, make sure that you are legally sound and make sure that you are covered as far as with your contractors, your employees, your clients, whoever. And then really a lot of times we implement a project management. That's one big one because everyone has tasks and everyone has, all these little things that run through your head that have to be done on a daily basis or weekly or monthly or quarterly. So having some sort of project management setup, and it doesn't have to be like ClickUp or Asana or something like that. It could just be things you put on your calendar. Those are really the core things. Like I'm not going to reiterate them again, but just those basic systems, I think, and then just we take those and we look at what our clients are using already or what they're doing or how their brain operates and say, here, we can take this system and we can put it into your business however you want it to be, essentially. And sometimes we nudge them, certain ways. If they're like, I have no idea, we're like, well, we really like ClickUp, so if you're open to it, we'll build it for you.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So many people, they're always looking for the answer in business. They're looking for the system that they need to reach the next level in whatever stage of business that they're at. And you're right. A large part of it is first that taking inventory. What's working, what's not. So I love that strategy component that you all build in, which leads me to the next part of the growth trajectory. And maybe it comes a lot into strategy, is that I remember being a beginner entrepreneur myself. I started my first business when I was 19. And I always thought, if you could just get the ball rolling, if you can get a few clients and start making money, it just snowballs from there and you'll just have infinite growth forever and ever. When the reality is, it's one thing that you guys say at BC Creative is that when it comes to a period of rapid growth, businesses hit a proverbial wall where it really stops them. I'd love to hear your perspective on that because it is a misconception amongst newer entrepreneurs in particular. What does that wall look like? Why does that wall exist? And what can we do to better prepare? Obviously, the answer is systems, but I'd love to hear your perspective a little more on that.
Yeah, honestly, when you get into business, especially in the online space, everyone tells you have to niche down. You have to find your footing, or the big thing is like you have to niche down to a certain audience. And like until the past 6 months or so, I was like, well, we work for everybody. Everybody needs systems. Everybody needs operations. Like our business model works in literally every industry. We have writers, we have psychotherapists, we have swim coaches, we have commercial real estate business owners. I mean, it's across the board. It's just all over the place. So it's like, how am I supposed to niche that down? But what I realized was every one of our clients was kind of in the same boat. They all hit that proverbial wall. So they're all growing rapidly, but for a couple reasons, they kind of petered out, or they weren't petering out, but the business wasn't petering out, but they were petering out. So they either got super burned out and they're like, I don't really have a passion for this anymore, which is scary because this is what I, have been wanting to do, and I've built this whole business. Or I want to take more clients on. I have clients that are contacting me, but I have no way. I'm completely booked out, and I don't have time to hire a team member, and I don't have systems in place to train them. Or I want to bring a team member on, but I can't because I don't have SOPs and I don't know what to do. Or I just really want to take a vacation and I don't have time and I'm so burned out. And it's really just kind of those three things. Either you're burned out and you don't want to do this anymore, or you do want to do it, but you kind of lost the vision. You want to bring on more clients, but you don't have time, or you don't have systems in place to do so. Or you want to bring on more team members, but you don't have time to train, or you don't have systems to do so. So those are really the three big walls that we see people hit. And the way that we work through that is really figuring out, okay, and this is where the audit comes in that we do. That it's one of my favorite services. I love it. We literally sit down and look at the entire business. So not just like what softwares you're using, but what softwares you're using. Are you using any automations? Are you using any integrations? Are you, how much are you paying for those softwares? Is there anything that you hate in your business? What are your daily tasks, your monthly tasks, your quarterly tasks? Kind of looking at everything. And also like not just the systems and like the physical things, but also like, how do you work? What does your day look like? How many hours a week are you working? How many hours a week do you actually want to work? And really looking at the whole picture. So then we can talk about, okay, let's maximize this software, maybe take this one away, and that will save you costs so you can beef up this one. Let's look at maybe time blocking or using a Pomodoro technique if you're getting overwhelmed with your task management. This stuff can be automated, so you won't need that for a team member, but maybe you do need to hire a team member so that you can take on this client, and you need someone in like marketing versus like a systems person. So a lot of the time when we do audits, we almost give them a plan to not hire us just because I'd rather them have a super efficient system and they don't need a VA or a business support specialist or an OBM versus, hiring us and then us doing a bunch of stuff and they're still not growing because they're still kind of confused about what needs to happen in their business. And then once we do those audits, they can really look at their business as a whole and be like, okay, this is what I need to do. And then this is what will happen. Once we integrate this and implement this, then we can really start looking at that growth again. So, and we create a whole action plan that they can keep. And it's usually anywhere from 7 to like 15 pages long, depending on how intricate their business is and what all, kind of how much of a mess their back end is. And then they can take that and implement it. And we've had some people that, they're like, oh yeah, this is great. And then they don't really implement it. We've had some clients that we actually just onboarded a client that we did an audit on them in April and they weren't ready to implement anything on the action plan. And then they contacted us at the end of last year and we're like, okay, we're ready to implement and we want you guys to do it. And that's great. We also have a client that he took the action plan and did everything on it on his own. And he, I think 2 months later, took a 10-day vacation without his work phone, which is, it's phenomenal. So like all of their goals are being met because of this action plan, which is really cool. So it really is taking inventory and seeing where you're at and seeing what needs to change to get where you're going.
Heck yeah, Brie, I seriously love that approach. It's something that I use big time when I had my search engine optimization agency, was that a lot of times when it comes to figuring out how to help people, I always say to people, when someone tries to give someone advice, my version of giving advice is always, you have to ask questions first to give good advice. And that's exactly what I hear in your audit, is that first, before you can give anyone advice, you have to take inventory of their existing art infrastructure and everything that they're doing in their business. And the thing that I loved about what you just said there, Brie, is I love when entrepreneurs, what they believe in matches their messaging and positioning of their business. So I'm on your business website right now. It's at bccreative.co. I advise everybody, go check out bccreative.co. And what you're going to find is the very top headline on her website is maximize your most valuable asset, your time. And so, Brie, so much of what we've talked about here today has to do with that, maximizing your time. And I'd love for you to speak directly to all the entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs that are listening to us right now who are sitting there thinking, gosh, you guys have talked about so much: client onboarding, sales, marketing, getting clients, fulfilling the actual projects, project management tools. How the heck am I, as a solopreneur, supposed to spend my time? And part of what you talk about at BC Creative is stepping into your role as CEO. In an ideal world, Brie, what does that role look like specifically for those solopreneurs out there?
It really is making sure that you are putting your business ahead of client work sometimes. Because honestly, like, you know, the old saying, like the cobbler's kids have no shoes. It's really, really easy to just let your own business just kind of fall by the wayside while you're putting all of your power and all of your time and energy into someone else's business. Because that's what brings in the money, right? That's what pay the bills. That's what, that's what pays your invoices. Working on your business doesn't necessarily pay the bills, in the meantime, but it does pay off in the long run. So making sure that you're marketing, pouring energy into referrals, which is because I can't say that I can, put a ton of energy into marketing, because coming from the person that didn't market for an entire year, but making sure that you're putting time into whatever's going to help grow your business. So whether that's content writing, whether that's making sure your website is optimized, making sure that you're doing networking and doing that referral type stuff, or marketing or whatever, and really making sure that you set time aside. Like for this year, it's in my goal, and I'm not, I'm not perfect. I am telling you this, but I also have to follow it myself, and sometimes I don't. I have set aside 2 hours, 2 hours a week. It's like an hour on Mondays, an hour on Wednesdays, just as a CEO block, and I block off my calendar. And then one day a month, I block off the entire day so I can't have any other meetings. And I really use that to focus on things that I want to do, things that, like updating my website, or creating a freebie, getting my email list kind of honed in, working on blog posts, things like that really need to happen, but I don't have time for if I just let myself get buried in client work. So yes, the client work is super important, especially when you're just starting out. But if you want to grow your company into a 6-figure company, an agency, a whatever you want it to be, you need to market yourself as well. And that's just as important as that client work.
Heck yeah, you guys heard it from Brie right there. The time doesn't make itself to work on your business as the CEO. You need to make the time for it, and you hear how disciplined Brie is when it comes down to literally blocking off her calendar saying, this is CEO time. So Brie, I love that insight into the way that you structure that. I always like to think, if I was a listener to this episode, what's the one burning question that I'm just like, Brian, go deeper with this guest on that? And to me, what I hear is, it's a blessing that you haven't had to focus on marketing for the past year plus. So referrals, it's clearly a key part to your business growth. I'm curious what sort of system you have in place when it comes to fostering those referrals.
Honestly, it's probably the client work. I don't want to say that I got lucky with my network, because in a previous job I worked in for 3 years, I worked in Charlotte as a race manager. So we did 5Ks and marathons, things like that. And I worked with a lot of nonprofits, and I built up my network, and I built a reputation for myself for being really, really good at what I do. So that, and a lot of those connections were on LinkedIn. So, a couple of years later, after I had that position, and I'm starting this business, I really made sure that I was connecting with people that I knew from that job and that knew my skill set, and then they could refer me to other people. And honestly, one person I had a Zoom call with, I think my second month in, he referred me to 3 people he knew, and 2 of which became clients. One still is. So he's been with me for about 2.5 years. And he is my number one referrer. I have a client list in front of me because I have to have it at a glance at all times. He's referred me to 1, 2, 3, 4 of my clients. So, I mean, it really is, in one breath, I'm saying, make sure that you're cultivating your own business and don't spend all your time on client work. But when you do spend time on client work, make sure you're doing a really good job and you're really hitting all the high notes and making sure that you are going above and beyond for those clients within reason. Obviously, keep your boundaries and don't go outside the scope of what they're asking you to, but just do a really bang up job at what they're asking you to do. And that will pay for itself in spades. I mean, it's really, our client roster has grown so much just from the people that has been working with us since the beginning.
Yeah, and the thing that stands out to me is how at the beginning of that, you specifically said, I don't want to call it luck. And for so many listeners thinking, well, Brie, you are lucky that your past job has shown up for you. But the reality is you create your own luck. If you didn't make that post on LinkedIn to let them know what the heck you're even doing, then you wouldn't have had the chance to create your own luck. So I love those insights. Obviously, we could talk about systems and growth so much all day long. But as we're coming toward the end of this interview, I want to ask you personally, because you not only are preaching this stuff, you not only are helping other businesses grow, but as the CEO of your own business with a growing team, with a growing client roster, I'm super curious, having gone through that, what your advice would be to the entrepreneur to entrepreneur audience that is just starting out and they'd love to reach the level that you're at, 6 figures in revenue, 4 team members and growing. And also, by the way, managing all of this while you're a mom, while you're building your dream house. What's your best advice for those entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs?
One of the big things is just do it scared. I mean, that's, putting yourself out there is for potential failure is so difficult. But if you just focus on what you feel, and you're like, yes, this is what I want to do, and I know I'm going to be good at, just have confidence in yourself. Just do it scared. And also, I find that mistakes are the biggest motivator and the biggest leap forward with success. So I've tried different courses and masterminds, and some kind of flopped and some were amazing. And the ones that flopped, honestly, were the ones that pushed me into the path that I'm on, probably 6 to 12 months faster than I probably would have gotten there if I hadn't had that massive flop. So really, mistakes are the best lessons and the best way to really figure out what you do or don't want to do. And honestly, figuring out what you don't like and what you don't want to do is the best way to figure out what you want to do and what you want to, what trajectory you want for your business.
Heck yeah, music to my ears, and it fits in with a Mindset and Motivation Monday episode we had recently, which is all about you win or you learn, fail forward at all times. So I love that perspective, Brie. Thanks for sharing that with our audience. And as we come to the end of this interview, I'd love to open up the floor because I want listeners to check out all the work that you're doing. The audits alone, that sounds like an incredible offer that you make. So I'd love for you to tell listeners where they can check out more about BC Creative and follow your work. Drop all those links for us. I'd love for you to invite listeners there.
Yes, please check out my website, like he said, at bccreative.co. And then I am on Instagram at bccreative_LLC. And then I'm mainly hanging on LinkedIn and just Brie Chrisman. And then you can also follow the BC Creative LLC page on LinkedIn as well.
Heck yeah. So, of course, wherever it is that you're tuning in to this episode with Brie, you do not have to remember those links. Check the show notes wherever it is that you're tuning in, or head on over to the podcast's website, but definitely go to bccreative.co. You want to see what Brie and her team are up to, how they're changing the game for people, and giving them more time back so that they can go back to focusing on growth. So, Brie, thanks so much for all the things that you do to help other entrepreneurs grow. And of course, thanks for joining us on the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.